A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist. A link is given in the video description. Episode 61. Are you going to Jadeboro for business? Roxanne couldn't hold back the question any longer as the car picked up speed. Lucian nodded in response to her question, his eyes never leaving the road. There's a problem with the account, and I need to check it out. Suspicion shone in Roxanne's eyes. And you have to go there yourself. She thought Lucian showing up to check the account was a bit much despite her limited business knowledge. Lucian's expression remained unchanged. The person in charge is someone from the Farwell family. Anyone else may be unable to keep them in line, so I must go. It was a reasonable explanation, one that Roxanne reluctantly accepted. She assumed Lucian's job entailed nothing more than sitting in the office and devising strategies, oblivious to the fact that many trivial matters still demanded his time and attention. Well, what about you? Why are you going on a business trip after just recovering? Lucian turned and gave her an unreadable look. Guilt snapped her back to the present. She had mentally braced herself to tell him the truth, but words eluded her now that she was sitting beside him. Roxanne hesitated for a long moment before answering evasively, I'm going to help out with an emergency in a nursing home in Jadeboro. Help out? Lucian echoed, puzzled. With whom? Is it set up by the research institute? Roxanne averted her eyes sheepishly. No. Eyes by the Damaris family. Mr. Damaris contacted me yesterday morning asking if I was interested. He said the situation is quite dire, and this time I'll be able to learn medical skills from them, so, she snuck a peek in the rearview mirror at Lucian, fully expecting him to disapprove of her traveling plans with Jack. However, his expression revealed nothing, and he simply nodded. You should do it if the geriatrics need help. Take care of yourself and avoid overworking. That's it. You have nothing else to say. Roxanne couldn't stop the words from coming out of her mouth. Lucian arched a brow in bewilderment. She realized she had said something she shouldn't have, and regret instantly filled her. Yet, words, once spoken, couldn't be retracted. It was a while before Lucian's voice rang out in the small space. There's nothing to say. Saving patients is your job, and I can't choose your work partner. Jack is indeed an exceptional doctor. I'm confident that both of you will keep your relationship strictly professional. She felt an overwhelming sense of dissonance remembering Lucian's prejudice toward Jack and then hearing what he said now. She was so caught up in her astonishment that she didn't notice Lucian's white-knuckled grip on the wheel during the conversation. He clearly didn't mean what he said. Quiet settled in the car again. Lucian had thought Roxanne would offer him an explanation or words of reassurance after he had shown understanding, but she remained silent for a long time. That ticked him off, but he couldn't go back on his words and could only keep his emotions in check. Thankfully, Benny had notified him of this earlier, or he would have flipped his lid thinking about Roxanne and her indulgent demeanor working together with Jack. You could take a break on this trip, too, Lucian continued, not meaning a word he said. The stories circulating online these few days must have affected you. I should have handled it better. I wanted to take you away for an excursion after my trip, but it seems that the medical consultation came at the right time. Roxanne came back to her senses and seemed to remember something. Sorry for troubling you with the comments online. Lucian frowned. I was the one who put you in this situation. I should be the one apologizing to you. Roxanne hesitated before continuing, but it should be me who files the defamation suit. People will misunderstand if you do it for me. They appeared to be a family in the eyes of everyone else, which was the desired effect Lucian wanted. He feigned confusion. Misunderstand what? A hint of resignation flashed in Roxanne's eyes, and she stared at him without answering. He clearly knows what I mean, yet he acts clueless. Lucian knew that she knew, and he was unfazed. Let them misunderstand, then. It works in my favor because everyone knows to stay away from you. He was very satisfied with the idea of announcing to the world what belonged to him, and he had no plans to retract the claim. Roxanne knew she couldn't change his mind and gave up, pretending the conversation didn't happen. The car ride continued in silence until she heard a strange sound, followed by the vehicle lurching. Tires busted. Lucian glanced at the dashboard with furrowed brows, wearing a solemn expression. Buckle up. I remember there's an expressway exit in front. I think we can still make it. Then he checked the roads before merging to the outermost lane. This was Roxanne's first experience, and she checked the rear-view mirror from time to time for anyone tailgating them or deviation from a blown tire. Thankfully, Lucian kept the vehicle speed moderate, and they were close to the exit. They could get off the expressway in no time. That was a scare, hey. He gave Roxanne an apologetic look after pulling over to the side of the road. The car was fine when we started the journey. Maybe we drove over something just now. Her heart was still beating a little quicker, and she breathed a sigh of relief when the car came to a stop. It's fine as long as nothing happened. Luckily, we were near the exit. Remembering something, she took out her phone to check the time. Her face creased in frustration. I'm not sure I'll be able to make it to the medical consultation. If it's an emergency, you can wait here while I send someone with another car to us, Lucian answered. Roxanne immediately asked, what about you? Don't you have business to attend to in Jadeboro? Lucian tapped on the steering wheel and said matter-of-factly, I'll drive the car to the service center. It shouldn't take long. Roxanne glanced around them. They were in a remote area with no visible signs of a rest area or any people around. In fact, there weren't any buildings in sight, let alone any service centers. Don't you have any spare tires in the car? Roxanne asked hopefully. Lucian furrowed his brows and replied, I've just used it a while ago and forgot to replace it. Feeling helpless, Roxanne glanced around at the deserted environment they were in. If their car were to break down here, no one would discover their whereabouts. Roxanne felt slightly anxious. I wouldn't suggest taking that chance, she warned. We're still a great distance from the service center, and I doubt the tire will hold up for much longer. Why don't you give the service center a call and have them come to us? We can stay put until they arrive. There were two of them, so they could look after each other. Lucian glanced at his watch. Do you want to stay here with me? Aren't you in a hurry? I think the elderly people at the nursing home need you to be there as soon as possible. A hint of hesitation flashed across Roxanne's eyes when she heard him mention the sick, elderly people. However, she quickly made up her mind. It's fine. Mr. Damaris and the other doctors will be there, so they'll be fine. Lucian nodded and pulled his phone out to call the service center. They waited patiently in the car for the tow truck to show up and tow the vehicle away. Roxanne took out her phone and texted Jack to inform him that she would most probably be late. As they were too far away from the town, the vehicle from the service center only showed up hours later. Lucian greeted the person and led Roxanne to the vehicle ahead so they could be driven to the nearest town. They did not make the journey to the car workshop, which was situated at a considerable distance from the town. Lucian retrieved Roxanne's suitcase and told her to wait aside while he spoke to the mechanic. A while later, he came back to her. "What did you guys talk about?" Roxanne was confused. "I told them to examine the whole car and make sure it's working well. A while ago, I noticed there seemed to be a problem with the speedometer." Hearing that, Roxanne didn't think much. She shuddered in fear and commented, "Thank goodness nothing happened to us." After saying that, she couldn't help but frown as something seemed amiss to her. Lucian rarely drives this car. It's practically new. Why are there so many issues? Her thoughts were clearly written on her face. Suddenly, Lucian extended his hand, interrupting Roxanne's thoughts. She found herself frozen, staring at Lucian's hand reaching for her. For a split second, she thought Lucian wanted to hold her hand and instantly panicked. The next second, Lucian took her suitcase and pushed it along the gravel path with ease. Roxanne heaved a sigh of relief. "Fortunately, I bought a large black suitcase out of convenience. It would look strange now if I had bought a pink one." Lucian led the way, pushing the suitcase, while Roxanne tagged behind quietly. They started making small talk. Suddenly, Roxanne's gaze landed on Lucian's hand hanging loosely by his side. Recalling her misinterpretation, she couldn't help but feel amused. "I can't believe I thought Lucian stretched his hand out to hold hands with me. He's obviously not that childish." Noticing her silence, Lucian halted in his tracks and turned over his shoulder to ask in concern, "A penny for your thoughts?" His voice snapped Roxanne out of her reverie. She couldn't help but blush upon recalling the reason she fell silent. "Oh, it's nothing." Lucian arched a brow. He clearly didn't believe her explanation. Roxanne caressed her stomach. "I'm hungry after walking this far. Is there anything to eat nearby?" As soon as she uttered those words, Lucian acted quickly, snatching her hand before she could take it back. Roxanne felt her heart skip a beat as she stared at their hands incredulously. "Come on. Let's go find a restaurant." Lucian pushed the suitcase with one hand and held her hand with his other. He slowed down so he could walk beside her. Stunned, Roxanne allowed him to lead her forward. This quaint little town, nestled in the foothills, was known for its pleasant atmosphere and peaceful surroundings. However, it wasn't without its shortcomings as it lagged behind in terms of development. There were only small, cheap restaurants by the road. They walked along the entire street but failed to find one restaurant that Lucian approved of. "This will do." Gradually, Roxanne calmed down and stopped in front of a restaurant that sold pasta. She observed Lucian's countenance with increasing amusement as it transformed into a look of disgust. When she was abroad, she frequently journeyed with Harvey to some of the most isolated mountains and rural areas. On occasion, they would venture to remote areas to offer medical consultation services. On other occasions, they would embark on expeditions to seek out rare and precious medicinal plants. Roxanne had been in poorer conditions, so she was used to eating at dingy restaurants. However, Lucian was used to eating at five-star restaurants. His frown deepened as he stopped beside her and glanced at the restaurant she was talking about. It was clear that he didn't like it at all. This particular restaurant looked cleaner than the others, but Lucian still thought its cleanliness wasn't up to standard. Roxanne said calmly, "This is the cleanest restaurant we can find here." With that, she went up the steps. Lucian's brows creased, but he ended up going after her. It was noon, so the restaurant was pretty crowded. Their appearance attracted the attention of the crowd in an instant. Roxanne seemed used to it as she found a seat and sat down. However, Lucian's frown deepened, showing that he was on the verge of losing his temper. Roxanne quickly assured him, "We're obviously outsiders. It's only natural for them to feel curious." Right then, the owner of the restaurant approached them with a warm smile. "Ah, you must be new to the area. You've certainly made the right choice." He gave them the thumbs up. "We take pride in re-establishment, which is the cleanest restaurant in town, and our food is nothing short of delicious. Just look how crowded it is here." Roxanne gave him a polite smile. "Yes, I can see that." Hearing that, the owner grew more enthusiastic. He handed them the menu and proceeded to engage them in conversation. "You two certainly look like a couple. What brings you to our little town?" Roxanne's hands paused in her action of flipping through the menu as she looked at the man sitting across from her instinctively. It seemed that Lucian had accepted the restaurant, as he had returned to his usual composure and was leisurely browsing the menu. Perhaps he looked too overbearing, for it felt as though they were in a five-star restaurant even though they were eating at a random restaurant. "You've gotten it wrong." Roxanne looked away from Lucian and tried to explain to the owner. The owner flatly rejected her explanation, saying, "It's impossible. I saw the two of you holding hands when you walked in. To be honest, you both are quite attractive. I've noticed the two of you since you arrived on our street." To prove himself, the owner tapped Roxanne's suitcase. "This belongs to you, right? I saw this man taking it from you." He acted as though he had done this so many times. He then proceeded to reveal their interaction along the way. The customers in the restaurant couldn't help but sneak glances at Roxanne and Lucian as they entered. The owner's words only added to their curiosity, causing them to stare at the couple openly. Some got curious and asked, "Are you guys celebrities here to film something?" Knowing she couldn't persuade the owner to think otherwise, Roxanne explained in exasperation, "We're not celebrities. We were passing by, and our car broke down." The owner finally stopped talking. Relieved, Roxanne quickly ordered, "I'll have squid ink pasta and a salad, please." She then glanced at Lucian, afraid he couldn't accept these dishes. Lucian turned to the owner. "I'll have the same." The owner nodded and left to prepare their food. Lucian swept his gaze across the crowd, and they looked away guiltily. "They don't have any ill intentions." "Don't behave like this," Roxanne advised helplessly. Lucian turned back to her and regarded her darkly. "Have you been here previously?" He had a feeling that Roxanne was familiar with this place. Roxanne was taken aback. Knowing what he meant, she chuckled and explained, "No. I haven't been here exactly, but I have experienced something similar. When I first went overseas, I had the opportunity to accompany Professor Lambert on various medical consultations. We often had to trek up mountains to gather herbs for our treatments, which was quite an adventure. That was why Roxanne didn't show any disgust for the town and felt at ease there." Lucian's eyes darkened when he heard her answer. He thought that this area was bad enough and did not expect her to tell him she had been to worse places. She had been through a lot over the past 6 years. If I hadn't acted that way, would she still be with me? Would she have been spared from all the difficulties and struggles she had gone through? Knowing he felt guilty, Roxanne said solemnly, "I wanted to do these things because they were meaningful to me. I didn't feel the least bit tired doing it, so don't take it the wrong way." Then, Professor Lambert gave me a choice: remain in the lab or venture out and experience new things. I chose to take the leap of faith and explore the unknown, and I would not trade that decision for anything in the world. The trips I went on not only provided me with a wealth of knowledge but also irreplaceable memories that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Had I stayed in the lab, I would have missed out on the invaluable lessons and experiences that I gained from the trips." However, Lucian's face was still dark. Roxanne helped him with the utensils. "I know you're used to dining at expensive restaurants, but I'm sure you've never experienced a taste quite like this before," she said encouragingly. "It's really quite delicious." She then began eating. A wave of guilt washed over Lucian's heart when he noticed how natural she looked. It wasn't that he couldn't get used to the environment. He just felt that she deserved to eat at a better restaurant. He was completely unaware of the many hardships and struggles that she had experienced over the last 6 years. They were slurping their pasta when Roxanne's phone rang. Roxanne's gaze shifted to the caller ID on her phone before she shot a quick, apprehensive look at Lucian. It was clear she was unsure whether to answer or not. Sensing her gaze, Lucian immediately knew who it was. "It's Jack, isn't it?" Roxanne nodded. "I told him I might be late, so he's probably calling to find out what happened. I'll head out to answer it." She got up, ready to leave. However, Lucian stopped her. "You can answer it here. It's related to work, anyway." In other words, he was saying that Roxanne had no reason to hide from him if it was a work call. Roxanne returned to her seat and answered the call. "Mr. Damaris." Jack's tired voice rang out. "I'm sorry. I was busy with the medical consultation and just got a chance to look at my phone." "What happened?" Roxanne explained that her car broke down halfway. She didn't mention Lucian was with her. Jack assumed she was alone and expressed his concern. Roxanne explained gently, "I'm fine. The car is being repaired, and I believe it will be ready soon. You don't have to worry." Jack still sounded concerned. "Do you need help? Should I ask someone to pick you up?" Roxanne glanced at Lucian. Lucian's head was lowered as he focused on eating his pasta. He didn't seem to have heard them. "No need. I think it will be done soon. You should hurry up and treat the elderly people." "I'll join you after I've arrived," Roxanne rejected his offer calmly. Jack didn't insist and reminded her, "All right, then. If something crops up, remember to give me a call." Roxanne agreed. After the call ended, she grew anxious. Jack sounded exhausted, so she assumed that they were swamped with work. She felt compelled to go there to lend them a hand. "How long will it take for the car to be done?" Lucian stopped what he was doing. "Let me ask." He pulled his phone out to call the service center. The call was answered shortly after. The mechanic sounded uncertain after he heard Lucian's question. "I understand that you're in a hurry, and we're doing everything we can. Your speedometer needs to be replaced, but unfortunately, we don't have the same model in our workshop. But we've already placed an order for it, and it should be delivered soon." Lucian's brows scrunched up. "How much longer will it take?" The mechanic answered, "At least half an hour. I'm already urging them, so please give us more time." At that, Lucian shot Roxanne a helpless look. He had put his phone on speaker, but the volume wasn't too loud. They were the only ones who could hear the mechanic's answer. Roxanne grew increasingly anxious when she learned it would take at least 30 minutes. As Lucian seemed displeased, she decided to appease him first. "Safety comes first. Let's wait a bit more." Lucian gave a curt nod and hung up. Right then, Jonathan's text arrived. "Jonathan, how's the town?" "Not bad, right? I asked many people before discovering its existence." Lucian glanced at it and quickly locked his phone. On the other side, Jonathan was confused as he didn't receive any reply from his friend. "I went through a lot of effort to find a scenic town that happened to be beside the highway. Don't tell me Lucian didn't go there." "Let's go for a walk outside," Lucian suggested after pocketing his phone. Roxanne assumed he didn't like the interior of the pasta restaurant. She didn't ponder over his request and nodded obligingly. After they paid for their meal, Lucian got up and took Roxanne's suitcase. They then walked out of the restaurant. As they strolled along the street, surrounded by the mountains, Roxanne and Lucian felt the temperature was just right despite it being past noon. Although the sun should be shining brightly, the foliage provided ample shade to keep the heat at bay. Roxanne might be in a hurry to head to Jade Burrow, but she couldn't help but relax in such an environment. "Do you like it here?" Lucian's expression softened when he discovered that she seemed relaxed. Roxanne's lips curled as she nodded. "When I first went overseas, I had the privilege of accompanying Professor Lambert on a number of excursions to the mountains, where we would search for herbs. Later, I had to stay in the lab. I do miss the feeling of being out in the wilderness but never had the chance to do so again." Lucian's eyes dimmed as conflicted feelings rose in his heart. He believed that Roxanne had experienced a great deal of hardship, but it appeared that she had actually been quite content. "Don't you find this place beautiful?" Roxanne stared at him, her eyes sparkling under the sunlight. Lucian was momentarily dazed. He quickly regained his composure and gave a brief nod. Indeed, this town was scenic. Nevertheless, the most important thing was that she loved it. They strolled ahead for some time until Roxanne realized it was pretty late. Concerned, she demanded to know the progress of the repair. "Is the car done yet? If it's still getting repaired, I'm afraid we'll have to spend the night here. There is no hotel in this town." Lucian fished his phone out to call the workshop. The person on the other end of the line sounded particularly helpless and distressed. I'm sorry to say that something came up while they were delivering the part. I've already urged before he could finish, Lucian cut in unhappily, I don't want to hear any excuses. Just tell me when it can be done. I'm afraid it won't be done by today. The mechanic sounded increasingly guilty. Lucian's brows drew together deeply. Realizing he was about to lash out at the mechanic, Roxanne gave his sleeve a careful tug. Forget it. Let's get someone to fetch us. He meant to call Jack to send someone here to give them a ride. Lucian understood her meaning. His eyebrows furrowed once again as he ended the call. Roxanne pulled out her phone to contact Jack. I'll ask Caden to come here. He can drive the car back when it's done, Lucian said to her quickly before she could make the call. Roxanne paused for a few moments as she thought about his proposal. After weighing up the fact that the two cities were relatively close in proximity, she eventually decided to agree to his suggestion. Only then did Lucian call Caden to come pick them up. Caden agreed without hesitation. It would take some time before Caden arrived. Lucian seemed to be in a foul mood, so Roxanne said to him gently, "The villagers told me there is a beautiful lake right ahead. Let's head there to take a look." Lucian relaxed slightly and took her hand, and they strolled to the lake. Meanwhile, the mechanics in the workshop were confused. Didn't he ask us to take our time? Why did he get mad at us? One mechanic seemed accustomed to such antics as he explained, he is obviously courting that lady. That was just an act. Comprehension dawned on everyone. If you enjoy it here, then we can go traveling often in the future, Lucian said when they were on the way to the lake. The past few years have been incredibly hectic, so I'm looking forward to taking some time off to relax during my vacations. He was holding Roxanne's hand. She stared at his side profile and felt a bitter feeling spreading across her heart. For the past 6 years, they had been out of touch and unaware of each other's current status. Roxanne led a hectic but fulfilling life. On the contrary, Lucian didn't seem to be doing well. We can bring the kids here one day. I don't think they have been in the mountains before. Lucian stopped in his tracks and turned over his shoulder to look at her. They had arrived at the lake. Perhaps they were in the mountains, for the lake water was crystal clear. The branches of the drooping willows by the lake were swaying lightly in the breeze. Roxanne glanced at him and said distractedly, "I believe Archie and Benny want to travel, too. I've been busy with work and never got the chance to travel with them." Essie, she didn't know much about Estella but could roughly guess the little girl's situation. Essie used to be afraid of strangers, so I don't think she has gotten out much, right? Now that she's doing better, we can go travel. She sounded natural, as though she had been thinking about this for a long time. Lucian tightened his grip on her hand, surprised. He was saying that on the condition that Roxanne agreed to be with him. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect Roxanne to continue the conversation readily. "Does she feel the same way as I do?" Roxanne's heart skipped a beat when she met his gaze. She didn't continue and merely gave him a bright smile as an answer. They remained by the lake until sunset. Before Caden arrived, Roxanne received a call from Jack. "How's the situation? Has your car been repaired?" "No. I'm afraid I can't make it there today." "I'm sorry about that." Has the medical consultation ended? What about the elderly people's condition? Jack chuckled bitterly. The medical consultation has ended. Everyone is exhausted. All these elderly patients have been suffering from old and stubborn diseases that are hard to cure completely. All we can do is help them recuperate slowly and patiently. Roxanne frowned as an apologetic look appeared in her eyes. You must have worked hard today. I'll make sure to arrive on time tomorrow to meet up with you. Jack reassured her, don't worry. We have plenty of doctors here to take care of any medical needs. Be careful and let me know if you need any help. Roxanne thanked him gratefully. They chatted briefly about the elderly people's medical condition before hanging up. Taking in Roxanne's downcast expression, Lucian pulled her into his arms. It's not your fault that they got sick, so don't beat yourself up over it. If you're looking for someone to put the blame on, then I'm the one to blame. I should have driven more carefully, so you could have made it in time. Roxanne sighed. That has absolutely nothing to do with you. I just couldn't help but feel bad for them. They were alone despite being ill, with no one to turn to for help. Even if I can provide them with the treatment they need, it will be difficult for them to survive without the support and care of someone else. Lucian was moved by her kindness. We'll figure out something. The most important thing now is to treat their sickness. Roxanne nodded. I need to arrive at the nursing home as early as possible tomorrow. I couldn't be there today, so I must work twice as hard tomorrow. Tea was almost 6 in the evening when Kaden finally arrived. After instructing Kayan to stay and wait for the car to be repaired, Lucian got into Kaden's car and drove off with Roxanne. When they reached Jadeboro, it was already 9 at night. Lucian sent Roxanne to the hotel that Jack had booked for the doctors. After he unloaded her luggage from the car, he glanced at the night sky and said apologetically, "Sorry to have kept you so long." Roxanne smiled and replied, "It's not your fault. No one expected the accident to happen. I should be thanking you instead for sending me here even though it's already so late." She knew that they had made their way to the hotel that late at night because she did not want to be late for the medical consultation the next day. They could have waited for the car to be fixed and set off the next morning. Lucian had asked Kaden to switch cars with them because he didn't want her to be disappointed. It's getting late. I should head in now. Text me when you reach your accommodation, Roxanne said before she turned around and entered the hotel. Lucian stood rooted to the ground, upset at the thought that the woman was staying in the same hotel as Jack. However, he knew that he shouldn't be kicking up a fuss about that, as Roxanne was solely focused on her elderly patients, hoping that they would recover soon. Lucian received a call from Jonathan the moment Roxanne disappeared into the elevator. He glanced at the caller ID before answering the phone coolly. "Are you guys okay?" Jonathan asked with a trace of panic in his voice. "We're fine. What's wrong?" Lucian replied while getting back into the car. Jonathan's expression changed slightly as he asked in disbelief, "If you're fine, why didn't you reply to my messages? I've been texting you all day. I thought something bad happened to you." After all, it was Jonathan's idea for Lucian to intentionally get his car to break down on the road. He could never forgive himself if they had gotten into an accident because of that. Jonathan had spent the entire day worrying and was hurt by Lucian's nonchalant attitude. Lucian had merely told him that he and Roxanne were fine without going into any details and even asked him if anything was wrong. Sensing Jonathan's tone, Lucian finally realized that his friend had been worried about him. The corners of his lips curled up into a smile as he replied, "I saw your messages but didn't get a chance to reply. It's a beautiful town." Jonathan was slightly appeased after getting an acceptable explanation. Feeling concerned, he asked, "So did the two of you?" If things had gone according to plan, both of them should be currently trapped in the town, and naturally, they would. "We're in Jadeborough now," Lucian replied placidly. Jonathan gaped in shock when he heard that. "Jadeborough? Aren't you supposed to be in town? Are both of you together now?" "No. Jack booked a hotel for the doctors, and she's there now," Lucian replied. Jonathan gasped in disbelief. "You had such a good opportunity. I can't believe you didn't do anything." "Alas, it seems that my idea has gone down the drain," Lucian explained helplessly. "She has a medical consultation at the nursing home early tomorrow morning, and most of the elderly there are seriously ill. After some thought, I decided I should take her here." Lucian could not help but feel guilty when he saw the pained look in Roxanne's eyes as she spoke about the elderly. Jonathan was also in the medical field, so he could understand Roxanne's feelings. In an uncertain tone, he said, "But still, you should at least do something. You have already followed her to Jadeborough. Do you really intend to just watch over her like a knight in shining armor?" Lucian furrowed his brows and replied, "What else can I do? I don't know anything about medical consultation. Since you are in the medical industry as well, give me some tips, then." Jonathan held his forehead in exasperation. Is he seriously thinking of helping out at the nursing home tomorrow? The man let out a long sigh in his heart before replying patiently, "From what you're telling me, Roxanne and Jack are staying in the same hotel now. Aren't you worried at all? You know Jack has ulterior motives toward Roxanne." The crease between Lucian's brows grew deeper. He looked up at Roxanne's room and saw that the lights had already been turned on. Recalling Jonathan's words, Lucian could no longer sit still. Immediately, he opened the door and got out of the car. Jonathan was still blabbering non-stop over the phone. After heading into the hotel, Lucian made a reservation for the room next to Roxanne's. It was already almost 10 at night when Roxanne entered her room. She hesitated for a few seconds when she walked past Jack's room but decided not to disturb him and proceeded straight to her own room. After a long day, Roxanne was drained. The first thing she did was take a shower. When she emerged from the bathroom, she noticed that her phone was ringing. She cast a glance at the screen and saw Lucian's name flashing on the caller ID. Assuming that he was calling to tell her he had reached back safely, Roxanne answered the phone while drying her hair. "Are you back already?" She heard a beeping sound on the other end of the line, which sounded like someone opening a door using a key card. "I am. I just found out that the branch office had booked the same hotel for me. If I had known earlier, we could have walked together." "Where's your room?" he asked with a straight face. A look of surprise and confusion flashed across Roxanne's face when she heard that. She could not help but find it strange that the branch office did not inform Lucian of the arrangement earlier. Besides, everything that happened that day seemed to be too much of a coincidence. However, as it was nothing serious, Roxanne did not think much of it and told Lucian her room number straight away. Right after she finished speaking, Lucian exclaimed, 808? What are the odds? I'm just next door. Roxanne knitted her brows slightly. This is indeed too much of a coincidence. If Lucian had not asked for her room number first, she would definitely have suspected that he had planned everything intentionally. Lucian remained standing outside the door while staring blankly in the direction of Roxanne's room. And Jonathan had assumed that, after knowing that Lucian was staying next to her, the woman would have at least opened the door to take a look. However, after he waited for some time, to his dismay, her door remained shut. Just then, Roxanne's voice sounded. It's getting late. You should rest soon. You must be very tired after driving the entire day. She let out a yawn as she spoke. Clearly, it wasn't appropriate for Lucian to suggest anything else. He had no choice but to agree. You too. Roxanne hummed in acknowledgement before ending the call. Lucian stared at his phone and furrowed his brows in displeasure before entering his room. He could not believe that he had entertained Jonathan's bad idea and was upset at himself for even having those thoughts. He was worried that Roxanne would realize the uncanny string of coincidences and start doubting him. Meanwhile, Jonathan, who was at home, was wondering if he should call Lucian to ask about his progress when he suddenly felt his ear burning. He rubbed his ear and decided against it. What if they are having? He did not want to interrupt the couple at the wrong moment and spoil the party. I'll just wait until tomorrow. Lucian was about to take a shower and get some rest when he heard a knock from the room next to his. After that, he could hear Jack's voice. Have you arrived, Ms. Jarvis? Jack had assumed that Roxanne had arrived as he heard the sound of people talking in the corridor above. Roxanne had just finished showering and was only wearing a robe, so she replied without opening the door, Yeah, I just got here. I didn't tell you because I thought you were asleep. Jack nodded and asked, Have you taken your dinner yet? If you haven't, how about we go outside and grab a bite? We could also discuss the condition of the elderly people while we're at it. Lucian's face clouded over the moment he heard that. Knowing Roxanne, there's no way she'll be able to say no if he mentions those elderly people. Roxanne really wanted to speak to Jack face to face, but it would be incredibly inconvenient to do so in a robe with her hair still dripping wet. After hesitating for a bit, Roxanne decided to turn him down. We'll discuss this in the car tomorrow. It's a little late now. Jack knew better than to pressure her any further. All right, then. Rest well. We'll head out earlier tomorrow morning. Okay. Roxanne replied with a smile. The look in Jack's eyes was gloomy as he stared at her door, which was tightly shut. All he knew was that Roxanne came here by car, but he didn't know who she came with. They rushed over even though it's so late at night. Roxanne waited until she heard his footsteps fade into the distance before blow-drying her hair. She wasn't all that hungry before, but hearing Jack talk about dinner got her feeling a little hungry when she was done drying her hair. Roxanne was about to order some food via room service when Lucian's call came in. You're still awake? Roxanne asked in confusion. I was going to bed, but then I got hungry because I haven't had dinner. You're probably hungry too, right? How about we go eat something downstairs? Lucian suggested in a deep voice. Roxanne was about to turn him down when her stomach growled loudly. Because of how quiet her room was, Lucian could hear it very clearly over the phone. I visited a place not far from here a while back, so I know a restaurant with amazing dishes for supper. It's been quite a while since my last visit, so I kind of miss the food. But it'd be pretty boring to go eat there all by myself. Oh, well. If you're not hungry, then I'll just forget about it. What Lucian meant was he would go to bed hungry if I refused to have supper with him. Roxanne had no choice but to take him up on his invitation. I'll go get changed and give you a call when I'm ready to head out. She hung up the phone and threw on a dress that she had lying around. Although she wasn't exactly excited about having supper, Lucian did spend the entire day driving her here, so she couldn't let him go to bed with an empty stomach. Besides, Roxanne felt as though Lucian was acting a little childish, which formed a huge contrast with his usual personality. Since it wasn't often that Lucian would behave childishly toward her, she couldn't possibly bring herself to turn him down. After getting dressed, Roxanne gave Lucian a call to let him know she was ready. The two of them then stepped out of their respective rooms, one after the other. The spaghetti strap dress that Roxanne had on was rather short and revealed the flawless skin on her thighs. She looked so stunning that Lucian could not take his eyes off her when she stood before him. So, what are we going to eat? Since he had already heard her stomach growling, Roxanne decided to be straightforward about it. Lucian retracted his gaze and replied, I haven't been here in a long time, so I'm not too sure if that restaurant is still in business. Come on, let's head downstairs. The two of them continued chatting as they made their way toward the elevator. That was when Jack's door opened by a crack, and he could see them as they entered the elevator. The look in his eyes turned gloomy the moment he saw Roxanne's outfit and recognized the man standing next to her. That's Lucian. So, he's the one who came to Jadeboro with Roxanne. I can't believe Roxanne declined my dinner invitation only to go out for supper with Lucian. Is it true what the rumors say about their relationship improving because of Essie? If that's the case, then it'll be near impossible for me to win Roxanne over. Jack's face darkened. The elevator slowly came to a halt on the first floor, and Roxanne followed behind Lucian as they made their way toward the hotel entrance. The moment they reached the entrance, Roxanne was filled with regret. She had chosen a fairly short dress for the sake of convenience. It exposed a huge part of her body to the icy cold winds at night. Roxanne wrapped her arms around her body and shivered when a blast of cold wind hit her. Wait here for me. I'll head back, and she was about to say she would go put on a jacket, but Lucian cut her off by taking his dress shirt off and handing it to her. Because they were going to have supper, Lucian was dressed rather casually in only a black dress shirt over a t-shirt. His slender arms and veins that bulged underneath the skin were exposed when he took his shirt off. Roxanne instinctively averted her eyes when she saw that, only to have it fall upon his incredibly muscular chest. As Lucian was usually dressed in formal attire, such as a dress shirt and suit jacket, she could only see that he had a huge frame. It wasn't until she saw him in a t-shirt that she realized just how muscular he was. He looked nothing like a man who spent most of his time in the office. Roxanne was snapped out of her dazed state when Lucian's voice rang out. Are you satisfied with what you see? I've been keeping up with my workouts over the years. Her face burned bright red when she realized she had been ogling him. It's fine. I'll go grab a jacket from my room," she stammered while looking the other way. Lucian frowned in displeasure. Why? You had no issues with wearing Larry's clothes, right? Roxanne stared at him in confusion for a few seconds before understanding what he meant. Oh, that's right. Lucian saw Larry draping his coat on me when I attended an academic conference back then. I can't believe he still remembers that. Also, is he being jealous? Roxanne stopped fidgeting and stood there while Lucian put the shirt on her. Unsatisfied with just draping it over her shoulder, Lucian even buttoned the first few buttons to cover her chest before letting go. Roxanne's face was still a little red as she caught a whiff of his refreshing scent. For some reason, it filled her heart with a sense of security. I just thought you weren't dressed warmly enough either. Aren't you cold with just a t-shirt on? Roxanne explained in an attempt to clear up Lucian's misunderstanding from earlier. Lucian turned and stared at Roxanne, who was all covered up in his shirt, and held her hand. I won't be cold if we stick together. The two of them looked really intimate as they walked side by side while holding hands. After making a lot of turns, Lucian and Roxanne arrived at a small alley. Noticing that the alley was completely dark, Roxanne flashed him a confused look and asked, "Is this the place you mentioned?" Lucian nodded. "It's probably closed. Let's eat somewhere else. What would you like to eat?" As Roxanne was very hungry, a huge variety of options popped up in her head when she heard that. After taking some time to filter through her options, she said, "Let's have crawfish. I haven't had them in a long time. I'm kind of craving them right now." "Oh, wait. Most high-end restaurants are already closed at this hour, so we'll only be able to find crawfish at the food stalls on the street." I'm not sure if Lucian will find such environments to his liking. Noticing the conflicted look on her face, Lucian held her hand and led her toward the food stalls that lined the streets. Roxanne breathed a sigh of relief and quietly followed behind him. Concerned that Lucian would dislike crowded environments, she was planning on bringing him to a stall with fewer customers. However, Roxanne couldn't help but go to the liveliest one when she got there. Since she hadn't been there before, she figured the one with the most customers probably had the best food. It wasn't until they had taken their seats that Roxanne realized Lucian would probably dislike the stall she chose. Sure enough, Lucian had a somewhat gloomy look on his face. "I'm sorry. You don't like dining in a noisy and crowded environment like this, do you? How about we bring the food back to the hotel instead?" Roxanne suggested apologetically. The frown on Lucian's face smoothened when he realized how much she liked dining there. After observing his expression for a little while longer, Roxanne felt a little relieved when she saw that he was fine with the place. Even so, she kept trying to chat with him to divert his attention until the food was served. It wasn't until the waiter served the food they ordered that she stopped talking and began deshelling the crawfish. After deshelling one crawfish, Roxanne hesitated for a few seconds before placing it on Lucian's plate. She did that to express her apology for making him dine here with her. She waited for him to eat it before she started deshelling another one for herself. Halfway through the meal, Roxanne realized something was amiss. "Hey? That's strange. I keep eating, but there always seems to be more crawfish on my plate." As she turned to look at Lucian, she saw that his plate was empty. The next thing she knew, Lucian had topped up her plate with yet another crawfish that he had just deshelled. Lucian paused when he noticed Roxanne staring at him in confusion. "What's wrong? Does it not taste good?" Roxanne shook her head. She was about to say something when someone bumped into the back of her head, causing her to let out a surprised squeal. "What the? Hey! Didn't you see us coming through?" The sound of slurred speech was soon followed by the intense smell of alcohol. Roxanne frowned as she realized they had encountered some problematic drunkards. "I'm sorry. I really didn't see you there." Not wanting to escalate the situation, Roxanne apologized and adjusted her chair a little. The drunkard's eyes lit up with lust when they saw her pretty face and amazing figure. Roxanne frowned in discomfort when she noticed them ogling her body. That was when she heard Lucian standing up next to her. She had wanted to stop him as she thought he was going to start a fight with the drunkards, but he simply stepped in front of her and shielded her with his large frame. Given how packed this place is, it's common for people to bump into each other. Of course, since you all think we're at fault here, I'll take responsibility and make it up to you guys. Which table are you seated at? I'll have the stall owner put your expenses on my bill, Lucian said while glaring at the drunkards. Roxanne breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that. Oh, thank goodness. I thought Lucian was actually going to fight them. He may be skilled and all, but they have us outnumbered, so we'd be at a huge disadvantage. She assumed the drunkards would leave them alone after hearing what Lucian said, but they were far from being satisfied with that. One of the drunkards snorted disdainfully and said, "Humph! We don't need you to pay for us." He then shifted his lecherous gaze toward Roxanne. "That girl you're with, however, looks mighty fine. We'll let this slide if she drinks with us tonight." Roxanne tensed up and began to panic when she saw him reaching out to grab her. Right as she was on the verge of freaking out, Lucian pulled her into his embrace and moved her away from that drunkard's hand. Being held in his arms filled Roxanne's heart with a sense of security, but she still felt somewhat worried about their situation. "Let's get out of here. Those guys are really drunk. There's no telling what they'll do next. Oh, my! Look at those thighs. They're so smooth and fair." The drunkard exclaimed while staring at Roxanne's exposed thighs. Roxanne instinctively pulled away from him and nuzzled against Lucian to avoid the drunkard's gaze. Having noticed what was going on, the drunkard's companions made their way over and tried to pull him away. Fortunately, they were not as strong and failed to grab hold of him. Eventually, the drunkard's friends had no choice but to keep apologizing. Although Roxanne was no longer in danger, she still felt incredibly nervous and anxious. Good thing Lucian buttoned up this shirt earlier. Those guys would surely have made even more perverted remarks if they saw my exposed chest. Lucian's eyes dimmed when he noticed how terrified Roxanne was. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Although the drunkards were a bunch of perverted lowlifes, they didn't actually dare do anything when they felt Lucian's intimidating aura. Noticing that Lucian was making a call, the drunkard's friends quickly dragged them back to their table. "Let's head back now that they've left us alone. There's no telling if they'll come after us again later on," Roxanne said with a worried frown while moving out of his embrace. Lucian, however, pulled Roxanne to sit back down. There's still a lot. Eat slowly. Upon saying that, he dishelled another crawfish for her. At the sight of how calm and natural the man was, Roxanne was filled with puzzlement. But gradually, she calmed down too. Somehow, she always felt that Lucian would never let anything happen to her whenever he was around. Like how she had fallen into the water at the beach the other time, Lucian would always hold on to her steadily. In the twinkling of an eye, the two got back on rhythm. Roxanne mindlessly accepted the fact that Lucian was dishelling the crawfish for her. The more she ate, the more she thought it was delicious. They had just finished the dish when those drunkards gathered near them again. This time, they each had a glass of beer in their hands. "Hey, gorgeous! Come on, let's be friends and have a drink together." One of the drunkards tried to lean closer to Roxanne. He was getting so near Roxanne that his glass almost hit her face. Roxanne scrunched her brows slightly. Just as she was about to get up and move further away, a hand reached over, firmly seized that drunkard's wrist, and twisted his hand that was holding the glass in another direction. An icy glint flashed across Lucian's eyes as he lifted the corners of his lips into an unfathomable smile. "You love to drink? Come, I'll drink with you." With that said, he raised his glass and brought it toward his mouth. That drunkard was stunned by Lucian's action initially, but after he snapped back from his trance, he shook Lucian's hand away in displeasure. Unexpectedly, as if Lucian's hand was like a clamp, that drunkard could not move an inch despite a fierce struggle. Instead, he found his wrist hurting from the tight grip. "Are you crazy? Who wants to drink with you? Stay away from me if you aren't courting death," the man yelled. Soon, the other drunkards had their attention on Lucian, and they began clamoring about starting a fight. Despite so, Lucian did not seem to notice their existence. He slowly finished his glass of beer while pinning that drunkard's arm on the table without letting go. Witnessing the scene before her, Roxanne felt her heart nearly thumping out of her chest. What is Lucian playing at? Who are they? Are they filming a movie? Are they the so-called bodyguards? They're all wearing the same uniform. But who will need bodyguards at a small place like this? Suddenly, gossip and discussions were buzzing wildly among the crowd. Roxanne vaguely sensed that those bodyguards the crowd was talking about had something to do with Lucian. Whipping her head around, she saw 3 MPVs stopped by the roadside. Over 10 burly men clad in suits got out of the vehicles and strode in her direction. He really called for backup. It took those drunkards a while to realize something was not right, and at once, they turned and tried to flee the scene. Nonetheless, the moment they lifted their foot, those bodyguards charged toward them and swiftly held them in place. "Mr. Farwell." The bodyguard in the lead respectfully went up to greet Lucian. The latter nodded expressionlessly before handing the drunkard, whom he had been grabbing onto, over to the leader of the bodyguard. The other drunkards, who had been shouting arrogantly a moment ago, were so astonished by what was happening that they almost sobered up and took turns begging for mercy. "Sir, we were wrong. We will never do it again. Sir, please have mercy on us. We drank too much earlier and didn't know what we were doing." Lucian lifted his gaze to Roxanne and signaled that she could decide how to deal with those drunkards. Meeting his gaze, Roxanne frowned dubiously. "Those people indeed scare me out. But then again, I don't want to make trouble. After a brief hesitation, Roxanne said, send them somewhere to sober up. It's time we head back now. To that, Lucian nodded and took her along. Before leaving, he turned around and shot the leader of the bodyguards a knowing look. The leader instantly understood Lucian's signal. It was, of course, a must to sober up, but just not in a way as simple as what those drunkards had expected. Arriving before the room door, Roxanne glanced at the shirt on herself. I'll wash this shirt and return it to you. Since they were at the food stall for quite some time and even got into a conflict with those drunkards, it was no wonder their clothes were reeking of barbecue and alcohol. Roxanne was undeniably a little thrown off by the smell. You probably got a shock earlier, didn't you? Lucian asked, sidestepping the topic Roxanne brought up. It took Roxanne a good few seconds to process the man's question. In response, she pursed her lips and smiled. Yeah, a little. That was a big group. We should have just walked away. There's no point getting entangled with them. Lucian's brows drew together. I don't like the way they look at you. In other words, he was telling her he chose not to leave because those drunkards were blatantly taking liberties with her through their words. Roxanne was taken aback, but she slowly put on a smile on her face. Thank you. I was the one who suggested eating at the food stall by the roadside. But I can't believe it had caused so much trouble for Lucian. Roxanne expressing her gratitude was probably the last thing Lucian wanted to hear. Nevertheless, at the sight of the earnest look in her eyes, he could not bring himself to say anything more except give her a nod in acknowledgement. Get some rest. You still have to get up early tomorrow. With that, he turned and headed toward the room next door. Only after watching the man enter his room did Roxanne return to hers. She wondered if she was just her imagination, but for some reason, she felt that the expression on Lucian's face a moment ago seemed a little gloomy. Yet, she could not figure out the reason. As it had been a long day, Roxanne fell asleep as soon as she jumped into bed. When the alarm rang the following morning, Roxanne, not wanting to waste much time, immediately got out of bed and freshened herself up before heading downstairs to wait for Jack and the other doctors. At 7, everyone arrived. When they saw Roxanne, several doctors who knew her went up to extend a greeting. To that, Roxanne responded with a smile. Did you sleep well last night? The last to approach her was Jack, who spoke to her in a familiar and endearing tone. At the thought of how she had rejected him yesterday but gone out for supper with Lucian, Roxanne could not help feeling guilty. When she heard Jack's question, she vaguely answered, "Not too bad. The hotel you picked has a pretty good environment, Mr. Damaris." Once she finished speaking, she coincidentally caught sight of a well-suited Lucian walking out from the elevator and heading toward the hotel entrance from the corner of her eye. Seemingly sensing her gaze, Lucian turned and looked in her direction. As their eyes met, he somewhat flashed a smile at her. Before Roxanne could make any expression, the man retracted his gaze and strode out of the hotel entrance. "What's the matter?" Jack noticed that she was distracted and traced her line of sight questioningly. By this time, the hotel entrance was already empty. Recalling the scene he saw last night, Jack could more or less figure out who she saw. At once, a look of displeasure crossed his face. Nonetheless, when he turned back to look at Roxanne, he became serious again as he uttered, "It's late. Let's set out." Those words pulled Roxanne back to reality, and she quickly put on a solemn look. With that, the group got on the bus Jack booked in an orderly manner. On the bus, Roxanne and Jack sat at the front. Along the way, Roxanne asked everything about the medical consultation yesterday, to which Jack answered all of her questions in detail. However, when Jack tried to ask her about the details of her trip, Roxanne was ambiguous with her answer. The matter between Lucian and her had already caused a commotion online. That was why she did not want to become the subject of discussion at work too. However, the more she tried to cover up, the more Jack could not help but overthink. How exactly have things between the two of them progressed? An hour later, the bus slowly drove into the nursing home. Roxanne, who was on the bus, glanced outside, only to see elderly people crowding in the yard with little caregivers around. The barren environment of the nursing home did not help make the nursing home look like a lively place at all. The elderly people are more careful. You don't see the kids these enthusiastic when we went to the children's home. Jack's wistful voice rang out beside Roxanne's ears. Maybe too many people died a few days ago, so the elderly people are frightened. Don't be too direct with your words during your consultations later. Roxanne hummed in agreement. Jack had told her earlier about how one of the doctors had been too careless with his words during their medical consultation the day before and nearly made one of the elderly people faint in shock. After hearing Jack's words, Roxanne felt afraid. She told herself that she had to be extra careful during her consultation later. When Roxanne came, the elderly people who had come for a consultation split into two sides. One party was worried about their health, so they were fighting against each other to line up at the more experienced middle-aged doctor's side. The other party was elderly people who were too lonely and wanted to have a chat. When they saw the sweet and meek young woman Roxanne, they all gathered around her. Roxanne patiently chatted with them as she convinced them to undergo a consultation. In no time, Roxanne became the busiest person among the doctors. Most elderly people suffered from several health issues. Not only did Roxanne need to chat with them, but she also had to perform acupuncture on them. Not long after, she was drenched in sweat. On the other hand, Jack did not have many elderly people who lined up on his side. When he saw Roxanne's state, he walked over in concern. "Rest if you're tired. I'll watch over them for you." As he spoke, he took a piece of tissue and handed it to Roxanne. Roxanne took it and wiped away the beads of sweat on her forehead. "No, it's fine. I couldn't come over yesterday, so I should work harder today." With that, she turned to smile at the elderly people. "Moreover, these kind people are nice to me. They don't want me to get tired either." Every time Roxanne was done performing acupuncture on 4 to 5 people, the elderly people would urge her to take a rest. It was Roxanne's guilt from the day before that prevented her from taking a break. Jack decided to help her from the side while explaining the situation to the elderly people for her. For a moment, the atmosphere was very harmonious. "My, you both have such a good relationship, and you're even here to give us old folks free consultation. You're kind." The elderly people could not help but comment on their tacit cooperation. "Young man, you must not mistreat this girl. She's such a great girl, you won't be able to find someone like her anywhere else. Hearing that, Roxanne halted her acupuncture session and chuckled before explaining, "You've misunderstood the situation. We're not." Before she could finish her sentence, the elderly people smacked their thighs and interrupted her. "Misunderstand the situation? We're no fools. We can see what's going on. Don't hide it anymore. Come on, tell us when you're planning to get married." The elderly people were taking the topic further and further from the truth, and a resigned look crept onto Roxanne's face. "We're really just friends. Please don't misunderstand us." The elderly people looked at them from head to toe before nodding. "We understand. You young folks don't like us old folks asking too many questions. We won't say a word about this anymore. Just be nice to each other, okay?" It was apparent that they did not buy her explanation at all. Roxanne cast a glance at Jack, hoping that he would help her out. However, Jack only smiled before turning away and changing the topic. "No matter what kind of relationship we have, it won't affect our ability to treat you. Next, please." He did not deny the elderly people's assumption of their relationship, and so the elderly people became even more confident about their guesses as they looked at Roxanne and Jack lovingly. Upon realizing that she could not change their minds, Roxanne decided to drop the topic. Nevertheless, she later made sure not to do anything to let others misunderstand the nature of her relationship with Jack. Roxanne ended up consulting dozens of elderly people, but their health issues were all common and not too severe. As she was fully prepared to find their conditions had worsened, she was glad to see that they seemed better than she had thought they would be. "Thank God they're not doing as terribly as I presumed." Still, there were elderly people who were in worse conditions. When she was consulting an elderly man with rheumatic heart disease, Roxanne visibly slowed down. "He's so old, and he has no children. If he gets a heart attack..." She could not imagine how hard it would be for the elderly man. Noticing her strange behavior, Jack walked over and asked, "What's the matter?" Roxanne gave the elderly man a pacifying smile before whispering to Jack, "He has rheumatic heart disease. I'm afraid acupuncture won't be able to treat him. Why don't we send him to the hospital instead? He would have someone to take care of him in the hospital, at the very least." Jack furrowed his brows a little before turning to smile gently at the elderly man. "Please let me give you a checkup as well." The elderly man liked them both, so he was cooperative with them. Jack narrowed his eyes and started giving the elderly man a checkup. Once he was certain it was indeed rheumatic heart disease, his expression turned somber. "How is it?" Roxanne asked. Jack had already taken out his acupuncture kit. He said to her, "I'll be performing acupuncture for him. Pay attention to this. This is what I'm planning to teach you for the medical consultation this time, the needling technique that has been passed down in the Damaris family for years, Route 13. While he spoke, Jack inserted the sterilized thin needle into the elderly man's acupuncture point. The look on Roxanne's face turned into one of respect. Like a student studying under her professor, she quietly stood at the side as she stared at Jack's movement and the acupuncture points he used. Roxanne had once heard about the acupuncture technique, Route 13, from her professor before. Even someone like Harvey admired the acupuncture technique. Every once in a while, he would sing praises of it to Roxanne, and that made Roxanne keen to find out what it was like. However, when she told him she wanted to learn the technique, Harvey revealed to her that it was a unique technique owned by the Damaris family. Back then, Roxanne had still been overseas. She only knew that the Damaris family was an elusive family, and when she saw the secretive way her professor acted at the mention of the technique, she started wondering if it was something he had made up to trick her. She had never thought that the heir to the Damaris family would one day be the one to demonstrate the technique to her. As Roxanne had nothing but admiration for Route 13 all these years, she could not help but place her entire focus on Jack's performance. Jack noticed it naturally, and an indiscernible smile grew on his lips. I knew it. She's as obsessed with medical skills as I thought she was. I might not be as good in anything else as Lucian, and I might not have known her for as long as he did, but I'm the only one who can help her improve her medical skills. As if he wanted her to observe the technique better, Jack was exceptionally slow whenever he inserted the needle. Roxanne had more time to mull over the details. Sure enough, the way Jack inserted the needles was different from the other acupuncture techniques she had learned so far. Even though she had read some of the ancient medicine books, she had never come across the method he was using. She guessed that was what made the Damaris family's technique unique. Roxanne was gripped by confusion every time she saw Jack insert the needle into the acupuncture points, but once she saw the next acupuncture point he chose, she soon figured out what made them complementary. The following insertions are the main point, so watch carefully. Jack suddenly turned to her and slowed his actions down as he showed her the position of his needling. Roxanne kept a close eye on his hand. When she saw him lower the needle into the position, she snapped her brows together in shock and confusion. The last 6 insertions were not at any acupuncture point, and she was baffled by that. In fact, she wondered if those needles were going to do anything at all. Roxanne then lowered her gaze to study the elderly man's condition. Once Jack was done inserting the needles, the elderly man's brows furrowed as redness crawled onto his face and sweat beaded on his forehead. Worried, Roxanne asked, "Sir, how do you feel? Are you feeling unwell?" Having said that, Roxanne turned back to Jack. He was only saying that out of concern for the elderly man's odd state, but she was afraid that Jack would think she had no trust in the Damaris family's technique. Luckily, Jack seemed unbothered by her question. Instead, he was standing at the side with a small, confident smile on his lips. Even when he saw the elderly man's reaction, his smile did not fade. Roxanne returned her gaze back to the elderly man. The elderly man seemed to be assessing himself as well. After a while, he answered, "It feels comfortable. I've always felt coldness in my chest all these years, but after the acupuncture session, my chest feels warm. I don't feel a tinge of iciness at all anymore." The elderly man closed his eyes to let himself dive into the physical sensation a little longer. He was looking more and more excited over time. Jack finally parted his lips to explain, "He has rheumatism, and it's not unusual for him to shed a little sweat during the treatment. In fact, that means the acupuncture session is doing its job." Roxanne nodded in understanding. After a while, Jack checked the time and took the needles out. "Sir, you need regular acupuncture sessions for your case. The Damarises will come over to perform it for you every once in a while, so please rest well and not get too agitated for the time being." The elderly man choked out, "I know. I know. Your acupuncture skills are fantastic." After keeping the last needle, Jack turned around to see the elderly man bending his knees, about to kneel before him. "Sir, please don't. This is just our job." Jack cried out as he hastily held the elderly man's arms. As tears gushed out of the elderly man's eyes, he muttered, "You have no idea how long this problem has been plaguing me. If not for you two, I really think I'd die from this problem one day." Elderly people like them were lonely individuals. It was one thing for them to die from their illnesses, but another if they had to suffer from a slow-acting disease. Without anyone to take care of them, every one of their attacks would equate to a tormenting period of living hell. The elderly man was delighted to hear from someone that his disease was curable. It took Jack and Roxanne a while before they could pacify the elderly man and calm him down. After that, they continued treating the rest of the elderly people. Initially, the elderly people liked Roxanne for her looks and her sweet demeanor, and they were also curious about her relationship with Jack. However, after witnessing how the two of them treated the elderly man, the others saw the duo in a new light. During their consultations, they would eagerly list out all of their health issues. Many even talked about the minor issues they faced every day, desperately hoping that Roxanne and Jack could make them as healthy as a horse. The two of them ended up getting heavier and heavier workloads. Once the sessions were over, Roxanne was exhausted. "How do you feel?" Jack was tired too. He took a bottle of water and walked over to sit beside Roxanne. Wiping the sweat off her forehead, she then took the bottle he passed to her and took a sip out of it before turning back to the smiling elderly individuals. There was a look of relief visible in her eyes. "I'm tired, but I don't mind it as long as these people get to be healthy." That was the aim of her trip, after all. Right as those words were out of her mouth, she recalled the technique Jack had performed earlier, and a contemplating look manifested on her face. Seemingly reading her mind, Jack smiled and asked, "Anything you want to ask about the Damaris family's Route 13? A solemn expression appeared on Roxanne's face when they broached the topic of their profession. "Where did you insert the last 6 needles?" "I can understand the starting parts because the acupuncture points were complementary, but the last 6 needles were not inserted into acupuncture points, were they?" A wave of admiration washed over Jack when he heard her question. Then, it was a sense of determination to get her for himself. The woman in front of me is so quick to comprehend new medical knowledge. I mustn't let go of her so easily. Despite those thoughts in his mind, Jack did not reveal anything on his face. Instead, he explained patiently, "You're right in that the last 6 needles were not inserted into acupuncture points. Where they should be placed should depend on the condition of the patient. It's complicated to explain it now, but these are available in written form. Once we go back, I'll send you the book." Even though he was vague with his answer, Roxanne could figure out that the book he was talking about had to be the Damaris family's medical book, which had been passed down for generations. She knew that the book would certainly contain more information than just Route 13. Upon realizing that, Roxanne gasped and rejected him. "No, it's fine. Please, just explain it to me in simpler terms when you're free. That book must be very important to the Damaris family, so it's best if you don't just lend it to someone like me." Jack seemed unperturbed. It's what my grandfather wants as well. Medical knowledge should not belong to only one family. It is our honor to share the Damaris family's medical knowledge with an excellent doctor like you. Roxanne's determination wavered. She was already interested in the Damaris family's medical knowledge, but she always felt that it was something that solely belonged to the Damaris family. She would be delighted and honored to have the Damaris family share their knowledge with her. However, she was also afraid. She wondered if she could bear the burden of Hector's admiration. My grandfather said that the Damaris family's medical knowledge would soon be known to the rest of the world. The more people who can grasp the knowledge, the more patients can be cured. It's my grandfather's wish to see a sight like this, came Jack's voice by her side. Roxanne had to dwell on it for a long while before nodding in gratitude. I understand. I'll study the book as much as I can. Just then, a pot-bellied middle-aged man walked up to the duo. Who's this with you, Mr. Damaris? Upon hearing that, Jack stood up to greet the man and make the introductions. This is Dr. Roxanne Jarvis. Roxanne, meet Terence Kenfield, the new person in charge of this nursing home. Roxanne smiled and greeted Terence cordially. So this is the renowned Dr. Jarvis. Terence exclaimed while sizing the woman up. People have raved about your beauty and talent, but I never thought you'd be this drop-dead gorgeous. To top it all off, you have a heart of gold too. The old folks have nothing but praise and admiration for you. I'm nowhere as kind as you, Mr. Kenfield, Roxanne said smilingly. If you hadn't taken over the nursing home, who knows what'd happen to these old folks? In response, Terence chuckled politely. Oh, it's nothing to write home about. By the way, it's getting late. Do you guys have any plans for the evening? If you don't, why not stay and have dinner together? It'd be a good opportunity for me to thank you on behalf of our residents. Roxanne frowned and was about to turn Terence down when Jack's voice rang out. Sounds good. Besides, I wanted to ask you about the old folks' follow-up treatments, he remarked before turning to Roxanne for her opinion. I'm not sure if Ms. Jarvis has any plans for the night, though. If she does, I'd need to trouble you to make arrangements for transportation to send her back, Mr. Kenfield. Naturally, Roxanne didn't want to trouble Terence, and since she was also concerned about the follow-up care, she decided to go along with the men. Let's have dinner together, then. I'd love to learn more about the old folks' follow-up treatments too. With that, Terence led them to a restaurant near the nursing home. Since he had already made a reservation, one of the servers promptly ushered them into a private room and served their food. Here's a toast to you, Mr. Damaris and Dr. Jarvis. Terence said as he raised his glass and regarded his guests with awe. Well, I'm sure you've seen the current state of the nursing home. We're happy to provide financial support, yet there still aren't any medical organizations willing to help us out. They think our elderly residents have a high mortality rate, so they don't want to ruin their reputation by collaborating with us. You two are the only ones who immediately agreed to provide medical consultation. After exchanging glances, Roxanne and Jack stood up. We're only doing our jobs as doctors, the latter replied pleasantly. You, on the other hand, ought to be applauded for your incredible generosity. It's clear to see that the nursing home is in shambles, yet you were still kind enough to take it over. You have our utmost respect." Roxanne nodded and chimed in, "Indeed. If it weren't for your support, we might not even have gotten this opportunity to provide medical consultation." Given that the three of them were equally enthusiastic about the nursing home, it wasn't long before they settled into a lively and comfortable conversation. Even though their discussion was about the nursing home's future, Terence, who was used to business entertaining, couldn't stop offering drinks to Jack and Roxanne. Not wanting to reject the man's polite gesture, the duo went with the flow, so much so that Roxanne started feeling a buzz from all the alcohol. Halfway through the dinner, several family members of the old folks suddenly showed up with bags of thank you gifts, which prompted even more rounds of speeches and toasts. Many of those people had no choice but to send their elderly parents to the nursing home because they couldn't afford the hefty medical expenses. Therefore, they were all filled with immense gratitude after knowing that Roxanne and Jack had treated the old folks without charging a single cent. Ow, then, could Roxanne not accept their heartfelt toasts? Eventually, she lost count of how many glasses of wine she had drunk, though she was acutely aware that her head felt heavy and her motor responses were becoming sluggish. Just then, Jack's muffled voice rang out beside Roxanne. "Ms. Jarvis, are you okay?" Roxanne forcefully blinked her eyes to clear her head, but all her efforts proved futile. Despite having heard Jack's question, she couldn't muster the energy to reply, so she could only acknowledge him by holding eye contact. Jack had also drunk quite a lot, and after noticing how intoxicated Roxanne was, he knew it was time to bid farewell to Terence and the family members. "It's getting late. We should be heading back to get some rest. We'll still have to return to the nursing home tomorrow to continue the treatments." Upon hearing that, the crowd knew better than to take up any more of the duo's time. As such, everyone expressed their gratitude once more before seeing Roxanne and Jack out of the restaurant. With Roxanne in such a drunken stupor, Jack had to keep her steady by holding her arm. There were even a few instances when he tried to pull the doctor into his arms so they could walk together a little easier. However, despite being inebriated, Roxanne still subconsciously avoided his touch and stumbled down the road. Naturally, Jack wasn't happy about that. Realize Roxanne's been intentionally avoiding all physical contact with me since this morning's medical consultation. Is it because of Lucian? Arg. How exactly has their relationship progressed? MMPH, Roxanne groaned as she almost bumped her head against the wall. Jack composed himself and strode toward her, determined to grab her waist and lead her away. Alas, before he could do so, a flurry of footsteps rang out, and a large hand swiftly pulled Roxanne into a tight embrace. "Let her go!" Jack shouted, his brows knitted into a frown. The next second, his gaze darkened when he realized who the man was. As Lucian steadied Roxanne with one hand wrapped around her, he fixed Jack with a cold-eyed stare. "I believe I should be saying that instead, Mr. Damaris," Lucian uttered. "What were you going to do to my woman?" Dealing with the branch office had been pretty fuss-free, so Lucian returned to the hotel as soon as he settled all work matters. However, he began to worry when Roxanne hadn't returned for dinner and wasn't answering his calls either. In desperation, he drove straight to the nursing home, only to be told that the person in charge had taken Jack and Roxanne out for dinner. After rushing down to the restaurant, he was shocked to see an intoxicated Roxanne and Jack, who was about to make a move on her. The more Lucian thought about it, the more his face darkened. Jack hadn't expected Lucian to show up, so it was no surprise that the latter's questioning left a bad taste in his mouth. "What brings you here, Mr. Farwell?" he asked warily, though he had other questions in mind. He wanted to know why Lucian was in Jadeboro with Roxanne and the relationship between the duo. More importantly, how did Lucian find out about the dinner at the restaurant? Was it Roxanne who informed him? Then again, Jack's intentions would be too obvious if he bombarded Lucian with those questions. Therefore, he decided to keep it short and sweet. "Is it me, or do you not seem to want me here, Mr. Damaris?" Lucian retorted coldly as he raised his brows. "Have you not given up on my woman? What would you have done to her if I hadn't appeared?" Try as he might, Jack couldn't take his eyes off the couple. The woman who had purposely avoided his touch earlier was now happily snuggled against Lucian's chest without a care in the world. Of course, that annoyed Jack so much that he couldn't even hide the frustration in his tone. "You seem to have a lot of hostility toward me, Mr. Farwell. It was also like this previously. There wasn't any evidence, yet you still suspected me of plotting against Ms. Jarvis." Lucian did not even try to deny Jack's words, and he looked as hostile as ever. It seemed that Roxanne felt uncomfortable because of his tight hold, so she whined and struggled a bit. Sensing her movements, Lucian loosened his grip and patted her on the shoulder to calm her down. When Jack saw the intimate interaction between the couple, his displeasure grew. "Ms. Jarvis and I just drank a little wine with the patients' families. We cured the elders, so their family members enthusiastically insisted on thanking us. I was planning to drive Ms. Jarvis home since she's drunk." It sounded like Jack was simply explaining, but anyone smart enough could decipher the meaning hidden behind his words. Jack was basically declaring that Roxanne and he were from the same world. They cured the elders together and accepted the family's gratitude together, and all these had nothing to do with Lucian. Naturally, Lucian knew what Jack was trying to imply. The former's face turned stern as he said, "Thanks for your reminder, Mr. Damaris. I'll tell Roxanne to drink less next time in gatherings like this." "Just like that," he retorted Jack's provocation. Afterward, Lucian added, "It's getting late. I'll take Roxanne back to the hotel so she can rest. There are a lot of things in my car, and I don't want to let you feel uncomfortable in a cramped space. Please just wait for your driver to pick you up, Mr. Damaris." With that, Lucian turned around and left with Roxanne. Jack boiled with rage as he watched the couple's leaving figures. "Mr. Farwell, are you backtracking now? How come I remember that you always treated your ex-wife coldly 6 years ago? You seemed to dislike her a lot," he couldn't help but mock. Pausing in his tracks, Lucian admitted his fault frankly. "I had indeed lost my mind 6 years ago and made Roxanne suffer. But now, I know my own feelings very well. Roxanne can only be mine. Mr. Damaris, I suggest you stop making useless efforts." Jack sneered, "If I remember correctly, it hasn't been long since you cancelled your engagement with your previous fiancé. And now, you're declaring your dominance over Ms. Jarvis. How ridiculous." The implication of his sarcastic words was clear. Jack was set on snatching Roxanne from Lucian. Lucian turned around and shot a glance at Jack. So what? Roxanne is the mother of my daughter. Just that fact alone proves that our relationship is impenetrable by outsiders. Right after Lucian said that, he felt something heavy against his body. Lowering his head, he saw that Roxanne had fallen asleep in his arms. She was resting against his chest, looking like she was about to collapse anytime. Lucian's eyes softened as he looked at Roxanne's sleeping face. He then bent down and carried her. In her sleep, Roxanne could smell a scent that made her feel safe. She leaned into Lucian and put her hand over his chest, grabbing his shirt. Even when his designer shirt was wrinkled by Roxanne's action, Lucian only smiled dotingly and walked downstairs. Under the influence of alcohol, Jack was even more incensed to see the two leave together. His eyes turned red with rage, and his hands balled into tight fists. So what if they have a child? After spending the day with Roxanne and discovering her impressive comprehension of medical knowledge, Jack was determined to win Roxanne over. She was the only one qualified to do research in medicine with him and build their own empire in the medical field. I still have a chance as long as Lucian and Roxanne don't remarry. I'm going to make Roxanne mine. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.